My name is Carl Bennett, and for the last 2 years I've worked night shift on the wind farm outside the town in Texas most people have never heard of. Most people think wind farms are boring. Flat land, spinning blades, a bunch of white towers standing in rows like they are waiting for a bus. During the day, that's basically what it is. You drive the access roads, check the turbine logs, fix whatever tripped a sensor, and go home. Nothing about it looks dangerous. Nothing about it looks like anything. That's what I thought too before I took the job. Before this, I was doing some repairs works. It was a decent work, but the company folded, and I spent 4 months burning through my savings while I looked for something steady. Then I saw a posting for a wind tech position. It was a decent pay, a company trailer included on site, no commute. The only thing that seemed strange was the interview. About 20 minutes in, the site supervisor stopped going down his list of questions and asked me something that didn't fit with the rest. He asked me, "You ever got any easy being alone somewhere at night, like really alone?" I told him no, figuring it was some kind of psych screening for isolated postings. He nodded, wrote something down, and moved on. I didn't think about it again until later. I should have. I drove out 3 weeks after the interview. The wind farm sits on a stretch of land about 40 minutes from the nearest gas station. Flat as a table in every direction, nothing but scrub grass and the turbines themselves, 100 and a change of them, spaced out in a long row that disappears into the horizon. My trailer sat there near the maintenance yard, a squat metal building with tools, the trucks and the office. A man named Dale met me there at my first morning. Dale had run a night maintenance on that farm for almost 18 years, longer than most of the turbines have been standing there. He looked exactly like you would expect him. Sun-cracked skin, a voice like a gravel, the kind of guy who would clearly spend 2 decades not sleeping enough and just not care about it. He walked me through the basics, how to log a fault code, which access roads flooded when it rained, how to climb the internal ladder inside the turbine tower if a sensor needed a manual reset. Normal stuff. Then almost as an afterthought, he mentioned the turbine we were back next to used to belong to a guy named Frank. I asked him, "Used to?" Dale didn't answer right away. He looked at the tower for a second too long, then changed the subject back to fault codes. Around sunset, before he headed out, Dale raced into the truck's glove box and handed me a laminated card. I figured it was some kind of safety checklist. Instead, there were 3 rules printed on it, nothing else. I read them twice. The first one made me laugh. I said, "You're messing with me." Dale didn't smile and said, "I'm not." I said, "Everybody get this or just me?" He said, "Every single tech who's ever worked here in this farm." He looked at me for a second and then said, "And most of them follow it." So I asked him, "And the ones who don't?" Dale looked back at the turbine, Frank's old turbine, and didn't say anything at all. Then he climbed into his truck and told me he would see me tomorrow night. I stood there in the maintenance yard alone with 100 and some turbines turning slowly against the dock. And I told myself the whole thing was some kind of hazing tradition, a joke they passed down to scare the new guy. I folded the card, put it in my jacket, and went back to the trailer. I wouldn't laugh at it for too long. Rule 1. If a turbine is turning and there is no wind, stay away from it. For the first few weeks, nothing happened. Night shift on a wind farm is mostly quiet. You drive the loop, check on the readouts on the tablet, climb a tower if something is flagged, and otherwise just sit in your truck and watching red aviation lights blinking against a huge black sky. I got used to the sounds of the blades make, the slow, steady whoosh that never really stops. After a while you stop hearing it, it just becomes the sound of the blaze. The first time it happened was on a night in late October. Completely still. I remember checking the weather app before I left the trailer. It was dead calm, not even a breeze worth mentioning. I was driving the eastern lobe when I noticed one of the turbines about a half a mile off, turning fast, faster than it should have turned even in a strong wind, let alone dead calm air. I slowed the truck and stared at it for a second, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. Every other turbine in the horizon sat completely still, blades locked. Exactly what you expect with no wind, just that one. It was spinning like there's a storm blowing through it and nothing else. I checked the tablet, The readout for the turbine showed 0 wind speed at the hub height, same as every other unit on the farm. According to the sensors, it should have been moving at all. I actually started driving towards it before I remembered the card in my jacket. I pulled it out, read rule number 1 again under the dome light, and just sat there in the truck for a second. If a turbine is turning and there is no wind, stay away from it. So I didn't get any closer. I sat in the truck, maybe 200 yards out, and I watched it turn for almost 10 minutes. The blades never slowed down. There was no gust, no gradual build-up, nothing that explained it. And then, all at once, it just stopped. Not slowing down, stopped. Like someone had cut the power. I called Dale the second I got back to the cell signal. Turbine 41, I said. It was spinning and there was 0 wind. He said, yeah. Like, I told him I got in a flat tire. That one does that sometimes. And I told him that's it. He said, you didn't go near it, right? I said, no. Then you are fine. I asked him what happens if you do go near it. There was a pause on the line. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. He said, there was a guy before you. Dale finally said, named Marcus. Good take, careful guy, worked here for 6 years ago. One night he saw 41 spinning with no wind, same as you, and he drove right up to it. Said over the radio he wanted to get a look at the gearbox, see if something was malfunctioning. And he got out of the truck, radioed that he was walked up to the base of the tower, and that was the last everybody heard from him. They never found him? Truck was still running. Door was open. His hard hat was sitting right there on the ground next to it. Dale's voice didn't change at all while he said it, flat as if he were reading a weather report. Nobody's ever figured out where he went, and I didn't sleep much that night. If you count the turbines from the yard and get 2 different numbers back to back, stop counting and drive back to the front gate. This one felt the most harmless out of the 3. Counting turbines, how was that supposed to be dangerous? I found about it 6 weeks in. It was a clear night, and before I started my loop, I was leaning against the truck, finishing a coffee, and I found myself glancing at the rows of towers, half conscious, counting them the way you would count anything sitting in a long line. 106, I knew the number. It was on every map on the site, every log sheet, 106 turbines. I counted them out of habit while I waited for the coffee to cool. 107. I stopped, figuring I'd lost some count. I started over again, but slower this time. Actually pointing at each row with my finger like a kid learning to count. 107 again. I stood there feeling a specific kind of cold that has nothing to do with the actual temperature. I remembered the card almost immediately. Rule 2 had felt like the strangest, most pointless one on the list, and now it was the only thing in my head. If you count the turbines from the yard and get 2 different numbers back to back, stop counting and drive to the front gate. I didn't count a 3rd time. I got in my truck and drove straight to the front car. I didn't count for a 3rd time. I got in my truck and drove straight to the front gate, sat in there with the engine running until my hand stopped shaking, and then I called Dale. 107, I told him twice. Dale said okay, and using the same flat tone as before. You are at the gate now? I said yes. He said good, stay there for a few minutes, then go and finish your loop like normal. I said that's it? You're not going to tell me what the extra one is? Dale exhaled slowly on the other end of line. Company installed 106 turbines. That's it in every contract, every county filling, every map. But every few months somebody counts 107. Been happening since before I started. So what's the 107th one? I don't know, Dale said. Nobody's ever gotten close enough to check because everybody who's counted it followed the rule and drove to the gate. So I asked him, what if somebody didn't? There was the same boss again, the one that told me the answer before he said it. He said, a woman named Batty worked a graveyard back in, I want to say like 2019. She counted 107 one night, and instead of driving to the gate, she decided to drive out into the rows and figure which turbine was the extra one. Match it against the GPS log. So I asked him what happened and he replied. She radioed in that she was approaching a turbine that wasn't lit up like the rest. No aviation light on top, nothing. Said it looked like older than the others, like it had been standing there longer, even though every unit on this far went up the same year. Dale went quiet again. I asked him that was the last transmission anybody got. They didn't find her. He said found her truck about 200 yards off access road. Engine off, door shut, no sign she'd ever gotten out. Searched for 3 days. The county brought a helicopter and never found her. And never found any turbine that wasn't on the map. I sat at the gate for almost 20 minutes before I trusted myself to drive again. Please, before we continue, I would like to ask you to like and subscribe to help me, and leave a feedback if you can, and also comment part 2 to support this video, and I will also create part 2 for you, and thank you very much.